Well, the military plane transporting 122 South African citizens repatriated from China is expected to land today at the Gateway International Airport in Polokwane. The group, including volunteers and SANDF officials, will then be transported by road to the Ranch Hotel in Polokwane, where they'll be quarantined for 21 days. For the latest situation at the Ranch Resort in Polokwane, we cross live to our colleague Chriselda Lewis. A very good morning to you, Chriselda. What can you tell us this morning?
Well, Desiree, we're counting down to the next half an hour to an hour now when we're expecting that aircraft to land here in South Africa. And of course, much anticipation, Desiree, as I've been indicating much earlier on, that of course the loved ones of those returning to the country have been waiting. They're saying the moment is finally here. And even though they might not be able to see their relatives for the next 21 days, you know, of course, they'll be quarantined for the next 21 days. A bit towards my left-hand side here. I'm not sure if you'll be able to see that. In fact, no, Desiree. Members of the South African National Defence Force heading towards the direction where possibly there would be welcoming that plane in the next 30 minutes to an hour. We're awaiting official confirmation about the exact time, but our rough estimate basically gives us around that duration. So once they land here, as you indicated, they will be transported via bus to the Ranch Resort, which is about 21 kilometers away from here, and that's where they'll be quarantined for 21 days. Well, just looking at some of the pictures that were posted on their WhatsApp statuses overnight, you can see that there is much anticipation. If I could paint a picture for you of what they've posted, Desiree, include in the aircraft as well, there's a social distance between them. They're not really sitting next to each other. They also have some protective gear on. I saw some masks in there, as well as some of the evacuation team that was sent to Wuhan, China, who had some of those white protective gear on with some masks as well. So it looks like certainly all the necessary precautions have been taken, despite this being a precautionary measure. Recall, the South African government says that all those getting on that plane that are en route to South Africa now are all healthy, but all the tests, I understand, would need to be conducted for them to make sure that they're 100% correct in terms of what their health status is. So much anticipation here. We're waiting for that moment. We plan to bring it to you live here on the SABC News channel, but I can certainly tell you quite a lot of anticipation here in this particular province, as well as in the entire South Africa.
Chriselda, the arrival time is expected around 10 a.m. Just give us a sense of anticipation there.
Well, certainly, Desiree, from our estimates from when the plane left, we understand that the plane left at 3 a.m. local time there. So calculating then would subsequently mean that the plane would arrive here at 10 o'clock this morning, shortly after 10, or at the latest, I would presume at about 11 o'clock. So I can certainly tell you some of the family members that we spoke to during the course of this morning, are really anxious about what next is going to happen. I think despite, Desiree, the fact that they will not be able to reconnect with their loved ones just yet. They have to go into quarantine for 21 days. But just having them back on South African soil is certainly what gives them much joy and is quite soothing to their hearts at this time, because you would recall that some of the students that are on board that aircraft have been in lockdown in Wuhan city for over a month now. The condition that they've described to us there is about not being able to access, different kinds of food every day they would buy from one place. They're not allowed to socialize with each other. Some of the visuals we've shown you on SABC News over the past few weeks or so indicated a complete lockdown at the university in Hubei, where some of these South Africans who are on board this flight have been attending school. They've graduated. I've seen quite a number of graduation certificates. So as some of them return home, they will not be returning to China. They've now returned with those academic qualifications. restrictions. They're hoping that after this 21-day quarantine period is over, they'll be able to restart their lives with their families. But certainly the experience that they have been through is certainly one that we cannot describe, but we'll try to speak to them as much as possible after that quarantine 21 quarantine day period. So not too far from where I am, we have our colleague Sophie Mukwena, who's covering the Ranch Resort for us, where we understand that possibly we might be able to get some visuals of the buses arriving. We're still waiting to hear official confirmation from Government Communication Services in the next few moments about what plan is being made for the media to capture that moment. But it won't be too close to the runway, I understand, Desiree. It will be a bit far, but we'll certainly bring all of that to you live here on the agenda.
There's been a global conversation, Chriselda, about media coverage of this outbreak. Just break down for us what sort of protocols you've been following in terms of covering this story.
Yeah. Desiree, very strict ones, and also in particular because you don't want to be part of the panic. You can sort of understand the panic that has been there. I mean, South Africa confirming now that it has 24 confirmed cases of the coronavirus. I mean, just a week ago, we were not at that particular figure. So, of course, as the numbers continue to rise, you will get a sense of panic. So what we have done is that we're relying on the National Department of Health for them to communicate. We've been contacted several times about suspected cases, but remember, the protocol in terms of what needs to happen there scientifically is that all those cases need to be tested, and tested by the required laboratories here in South Africa. Then only then can you deem a particular case negative or positive. So we've been relying on the National Department of Health to communicate those figures for us. They communicated yesterday, indicating that South Africa stands now at 24 in terms of the confirmed cases of COVID-19. So in the age of disinformation and fake news, it's very important as well to verify consistently with the information that comes out from various sources. So it has been quite a daunting task for us, but the verification process has certainly guided us, not just South African media, but I think media generally around the world, because you could understand the panic that there is. I mean, there's been general panic in terms of the South Africans who will be landing here this morning, which government says, have not contracted the coronavirus, but this precautionary measure that is being taken, that seems to have all fallen on deaf ears in certain quarters of society, where you would know here, for example, in Limpopo, there were some quarters that said that the South Africans who are coming from Wuhan city should not land here, they should be sent to their respective provinces. There's a lot of consultation that has also happened behind the scenes. We also know that government will be meeting with sections of the churches today. You'd note, Desiree, as we head towards the very busy Good Friday Easter weekend, the concern is that perhaps big gatherings would not be a great idea. But what we're all looking forward to now, to tomorrow, where you will have President Cyril Ramaphosa chairing that special cabinet sitting, where the high on the agenda is the coronavirus, and whether South Africa will change its stance pertaining to where it is now. Will issues of travel restrictions then also come into play? So that's why we're also going to be watching that special cabinet sitting very importantly, and I know the SABC politics team will be covering that for us. So in the midst of all the panic, and understandably so, Desiree, anyone, I think generally around the world, there's generally panic when we don't understand exactly what is going on. I mean, scientists and those who would know better, health experts, are still trying to figure out exactly what this coronavirus is, how it is spread. All we know now, of course, is that we've got to consistently wash our hands and ensure that if someone has symptoms related to the coronavirus, they should seek that kind of medical attention. So it's been quite a daunting task to ensure that all the information that we disseminate to the public does not contribute towards the public towards the panic that we see.
Chriselda Lewis, thank you so much for that update. The anticipated landing is within the agenda timeframe, so we hope to reconnect with you when that happens.